the logic game. That is, so this is what we call the logic game. That is, you look at what is presented and then follow to solve the same questions. So this is for maths, and that is what we do for the lower primary and then upper primary and JHS. Okay, so for instance, this is the column, the first one, second, and so on. So right, so they look at this, and then we have the same question here, similar one here. So they look at whatever is done here, repeat same, repeat here, repeat here, repeat here, repeat here. And there's another question, there's a little more complex. So they do that one too. There's a little more complex. Okay, so they do that one. There's a simple one, there's a complex one. But they follow the same thing. So what we have here, the same equation, similar equation. They go to the next step, do the same thing for this, do the same thing here, and then present. So this is the daily exercise that we're doing. Now we have the portion here. Let me show you. This is the first part they should start with. For the class 1, 2, 3, they usually will start with this one. So we have this example here. This is the graph. So this is the graph. Y axis, X axis. Okay. So we have a similar graph. They should draw the same thing. Then you give them point to plot like they've done. The one who finishes first, we check on that. And then we have this one following the same thing here. Okay, so they follow this, the same thing, follow that to finish this one. Okay, they follow the same pattern for this one, and then do same. So this is just like looking at what is done, and then you try to follow the same steps. Then we see the answer that you get. So that's more or less like a game between 2 or 3. You see the one who will get it correct. Okay, so but this game covers almost the essential parts of mathematics. So that's what we're doing. So for instance, you come here, you see it starts from dash to box to letter A. So that's how they solve it. Then they have the change of subject, which is very important. How to do that simple one. When negative crosses becomes positive, positive crosses becomes negative. That is. Then when you have A over B is equal to C, every number is over 1. That's what you say cross multiplication. You do that to do your change of subject. Then they come to a little more complex one. So then we have the indices, exponent, and so on. So A times A is the same as A to the power 2. When it is division, you subtract here. They look at it and then do similar. Right, so this is what we call the logic game, and we're going to do this a lot. It's going to form part of the major exercises that the kids will be doing online as part of this online school. Right, so let me put that one aside. The next thing I want us to look at is a summary of the spelling pattern. Okay, I think that is more important. Let me just show one here. We finish with English. We finish with the mathematics aspect. Now let's look at the English aspect. So when does the spelling be? When the word is mentioned, okay, you first would have to ask for the origin, because the origin gives you the picture. Then you look at the breaks in the word. The breaks in the word. You can look at that with respect to the prefix, infix, suffix. Suffix is the last one. Infix the word in. Prefix is the word that is beginning, that has meaning. Infix inside has meaning, ending has meaning. Okay, or where we have the breaks, but they do not actually give a particular meaning. They may give something more broad meaning. You can say the first one is the first syllable. Then we have the middle syllables. Okay, let me make it syllables, because usually you may have 1 or 2 more middle syllable or syllables, and then we have the last syllable. Okay, so these are the breaks. Just like we have the word, you come to letters, you go to phoneme or grapheme to syllables to prefix, infix, suffix, all together forming affixes, then affixes, and then root word forming the morpheme, of course, the complete word on its own. Right, so this is just a box for the prefix, infix, suffix. Okay, let's put it this way: prefix, infix, suffix. Okay, right, so these are here. We have a vowel. Either you raise the vowel, or you lower the vowel depending on the consonant coming after it. Okay, and that is what we are showing here. That's what we're showing here. That's what we're showing here. So if the consonant coming after it is single, you usually will raise the vowel. If it is double, you lower the vowel. Okay, you raise or prolong when it is one syllable, one consonant. If it is double consonant, you lower. In most cases, usually the words that came after 15, 16, 17 O's, right? That was when the doubling rule was more effective. In Spanish, it was quite late, so maybe 19th century. But so that is it. Now, it's also important we get the 4 broad classifications for all language origin. So this is about origin. It's important you have this one. So about origin, what you usually do is when the word is mentioned, you should get the origin. To get the origin, you can put the origin in one of these 4 groups. Okay, we have 3. We have 3 broad ones, but we have 4 altogether. We can have the first group is usually the English, and then whereas languages that are very, very close to English. So we have England, USA, Canada, Australia. Let me put Australia there. All right, so you also have Wales. Let me put this one there. Wales. You have Wales. You have Ireland. And then we have Scotland. So these are the Gaelic languages. They tend to be closer to Greek. So Wales. Wales. Okay. So they speak Welsh. Okay. And then Ireland, Irish. Scotland, Scottish. Alright, so they are in the first group. So for them, they follow the English pattern of spelling and all that. When it comes to the second group, which is intermediate, the intermediate tend to be more of European kind of, okay, excluding Russia. So these European kind of, we have 2 main groups. We have those that use a lot of doubling, and they are the Italians, okay. They use a lot of doubling, okay. Then those that use less doubling, like the Spanish. So you see that here is ILO, but if it is Italian, it may be ILLO, okay, right. And in Spanish, you have to note that when it is double L, it becomes Y sound. Becomes Y sound, which we'll talk about later, okay. And then NO is pronounced N with a symbol on it is pronounced nya, nya, okay, which also means small. Unlike Portuguese, I should have put Portuguese here. Portuguese is in between here. Okay, Portuguese will usually be NHO, which means small form. Okay, and then the EI as a sound in Portuguese is also there, but usually this is at the prefix area. Okay, at the surface area you can have, sorry, it's usually at the surface area. It can be at the surface area. When it is at the prefix, that is where we have Japanese may have geisha, EI at the prefix, geisha, EI as the prefix area. Okay, so as a sound. But so we'll talk. This is just brief. This enough. When we take the letters one after the other, we'll talk. We'll go into details about each. All right, so that is so the first group, English and its groups. Okay, we've mentioned them. So English. Then you also have Greek, Latin being part of the first group. Okay, so they follow similar pattern. They do 1 or 2 doubling. They don't usually do a lot of doubling. Okay, right. And then they have a lot of prolonged vowels. So you either do doubling or you have prolonged vowel. Okay, so doubling or prolonged vowel, and usually you don't want to have twice or more than twice of that in the. I've already talked about the second group. They like a lot of doubling. The Italians, okay, now. Yeah, let me add this one to it. So it's important you note that sometimes you may also have the EI, or AE or EA. So where we have the digraphs, okay. So for English, the those in the first column, that is English and its associated languages, they usually will go for the first letter when it is EI or AE or EA. When it is German, the Germans
the Greeks sometimes they will go for the second letter. So when it is EI, the I at the end is pronounced more, and then the E beginning is more silent. So EI will be I in German, EI in English will be E or A in English. I hope you get that part in right. So this is more. I mean, it is illustrated in the main letter wake up that I did. So I will leave that one here. Let's continue with the video.
German, Africans, Dutch, they have similar. They tend to have more doubling for vowels, okay? Especially when it is A, less E. So most of the time it's A. So when it's most of the time they will make double A instead of just having one A for the others. Hawaiian is also something I have to. Hawaiian.
Sometimes too, the
Okay.
Maori people also do similar. They are
spell
similar too,
according. I
but
mean,
they go for
they are
E,
part of
E
far
for
off.
E.
Far off languages. I mean, it means they are very far off from the English language. So they tend to you spell them according to how you hear. How you hear the sound, okay? It is spelled according to how. So that is we'll come to. So let's go to the third. The third group is usually the Spanish. Less doubling, okay? So they may just have ILO instead of ILL. So ERO or ERA, and so on. Right. So when it comes to the far off, they like single consonant, single vowels. Okay, though the West maybe. So they tend to use more of the prolonged vowel and then single consonant. Okay, right. And they are Asian, African countries. So Sanskrit, which is part India. Okay, Hindi. Okay, but the Hindu language tend to have may have some doubling for vowels, maybe, or consonants. Okay, may have double, but usually it's one, just like Arab or Arabic may also have, and then
Yeah, at this point, let me just add also for Hindi language or the Hindu people, E and I you can interchange them most of the time. You can interchange them. That is in terms of their letter spelling. For E sound, you can use the E or the I's for the E sound, right? So note it. But if it is ending and it's telling you that it is a group of people, then use the I. You know, place or group of people use I at the end. Okay, yeah. So note that one. Just like similar, I mean, similar one is used in English where we have stimulus becomes stimuli. So that is US becomes I, the plural form becomes I. Okay, that one is there. But this is when it is we are referring to a group of people from a particular place. Pakistani. So that is I instead of E. So note that one.
the Hebrew may also have just one. Okay, Hebrew shares some common thing with the Dutch. Okay, and then the Yiddish one. Okay, right. So let's note, and then the OTH, they tell you that they are coming from Hebrew. Okay, they will tell you they are coming from Hebrew. So note that one. So it's important we get that one too. So like the fourth one is far off Asian. They don't come close to English. So you spell according to how you hear them. Okay, you only do doubling when you think the word is at there's a break and then there's a continuation then before you do doubling, just like Hawaiian language. So it will just be one A unless it's then you make it double A. Okay, so that's for far off. Okay, right. The far off also.
So let me just talk briefly about the schwa. So the schwa is where we have all the 5 or 6 uh, vowels being represented by half pronunciation instead of, let's say, it's shortened like sound. So you have like half pronunciations for the vowels. That is the schwa sound, and that is common in English. Okay, so the English pattern of pronunciation tends to be more sinusoidal. Okay, that means it's like wavy. It goes up and comes down. Okay, so where there's a fall, that is where we have a fall on the vowel. Then we have the schwa pronunciation. Okay, usually when the schwa is at the end of the word, it is almost always a letter. Okay, but if it is at the prefix infix, that is where we have the issues. So sometimes you need to know the root word. If you know them, if you know the root word, you can, I mean, be able to deduce whether it will be A or E or I or Y or O or U. Okay, so that one is there. You can get that one. If you don't know, for the scientific words, especially, we use O, letter O, to connect prefix and suffix when it is the origin is Greek, and then we use I when the origin is Latin. That is common. That is also common thing that we sometimes do. So you note it. And sometimes remember the O joining two prefixes, joining prefix and infix may sound like double A sound, so R sound, and that is for English and Greek, the first group people. Okay, but if it is far off and it is R sound, it can be A. It usually will be A letter that can be pronounced with the R sound, like the prolonged vowel sound. Okay, so note these bits and pieces of advice that we are giving. Now, there's another point I also want to add. When it comes to the same schwa sound, sometimes you need to know there's a particular pattern for maybe fixes, for prefix, for infix and suffix. So then you don't need to, for if it is et, that's ette, or et, the origin is French, then you know it is something, the small form, small, beautiful. The same for ELLE or EL. So it's small, beautiful, nice. That's what it means. Okay. So if you know the origin, you can predict. But if the sound is more raised, it tends to have the I instead of E1. So the E will be ELLA will be Ella. And then if it is Ella, then it becomes I. But this is not almost all the time. So sometimes you need to have seen the word. The best way to recognize these words is to go through the videos that we have for all the letters. There's a first level, second level, and third level speed. Okay, you're able to get almost, and then the third level speed, you can get almost all the words for A to Z in maximum, let's say 4 hours. Okay, so if 4 hours you want to know, get exposed to all the words, just contact us. We can get you the Dr. Cap third level speed spelling rules, and this is for international spelling bee. So that is important. That's a point I wanted to add. So I think it's important. So still on the schwa, let's see another. So sometimes too you need to know the meaning, like I said. So small, beautiful, then you know it is Ella or L. If it is Spanish, it's one consonant that is used. So Ella will be ILA instead of ILLA. Right? Because if double L is used in Spanish, the sound changes to Y, just like H is not pronounced in Spanish if it is beginning. And then J, okay, J, you have to pronounce like the H sound. Okay, right. So J, that is in Spanish. JUA will become Hua. And so then you have let's say the other things that I think, let me, maybe as we go on, I'm sure we'll come across more, then I'll talk about. Okay, so there's also another part. When it comes to CH and C, hard K sound, soft, so very hard K will be, I mean, the C hard sound will be C for A, O, U, and the soft C sound will be for E and I, and sometimes Y. Okay, so note. But if you want to change soft to hard, then you add H to the C. So CH, CA is Ka. And if you add H, it becomes Cha, like charcoal. Okay. Now CI is soft, so that will be C. But if you add H, it may be LCE will be S. But if you add H to the H to the C, it becomes chemical. Okay, so these are patterns that may not show, but you know. Okay, and then when it comes to Italian, okay, they do a lot of doubling. They like doubling, and then they also would also use they sometimes also use what we call the all right. So like I said, so it's important we look at all those factors. Let's see, and then you should also know that when it comes to German, Dutch, Africans, okay, they do a lot of AAs. Sometimes even can have triple A, right? And then also remember that the F sound will go for V, and then V sound will go for W in German, but the reverse is true for Latin. So in Latin, V letter will have W sound, so you come backwards with that. So W will go for W letter will go for, W sound will go for V letter. Okay, so for instance, in Pisek we have a what we call the Vidibimos. Instead of saying Vidibimos, you rather say Widibimos although when it starts with V. Okay, so that is it. Let's see. That is Latin. Okay, but if it is German, then you have maybe Vetem, W. Mm, okay, you rather would use V sound and say Vetem. And so these are bits and pieces that you may also have to look at. And then D ending German words will sound like T sound. Note them. So the hard consonants kind of, you should note them also. Let's see what also comes up again. We talk about E sound, where we can have E or E, E sound for I, O, or for E letter. That one we have talked about. So I think I don't need to talk about it. All right. So that is enough for now. Let's end it with this part.
Okay, so that's for far off. Okay, right. The far off also, they do a lot of long vowels. So note that less double, usually single. Right. This is just a brief thing that when we take each letter after the other in the spelling bee once, I think you come to understand that well. Thank you very much. Let me see if there's something more. Let's just take some videos of these ones that we have looked at before. So this is just summary of what the same thing that we talk about, the prefix. Some E with this sound is E, can be E or I. When it is this is in the far, let's hear if it is English, we tend to go for the E for E letter. If it is intermediate and then far off, we tend to go use I for E sound. Okay, right. So unless it has meaning, when it has meaning, we then use the I and E for meaning kind of words. That one we know them. Right. So that is it. Right. So that is it. So E usually for here. This E is usually E, but here E sound maybe I letter. The same thing, E sound is I letter, E sound is I. But when it comes to Spanish, Spanish, Portuguese, okay, the Spanish and then the Portuguese, okay, they usually the E sound is usually E, so it's usually I, but when it is ending, the E ending, if it is just coming from, if it is de novo, that means coming from Portuguese or Spanish, no other language, then the E at the end will also be E letter. Sorry, E letter. Note that. Okay, so this is something I'm just. So that's what I mean. That's the E at the end. So Spanish, Portuguese, the E sound is represented by I letter. But if it is ending and it is only Spanish and Portuguese, then the word is only limited to Spanish and Portuguese. Then they use the letter E for E at the end. Right. Okay. So when it comes to languages that were colonized by the British, they also tend to use the letter E for E, the E sound. Most of them, but not all of them. In Africa, it's divided. West Africa may use letter E for E. Well,
Right. So yeah. So like you said, African countries, some of them may use E, letter E for E sound. Some may use I. Okay. So that may also be interchanged somehow. Maybe Nigeria may do that. Ghana may go for E for E. E for E letter, right? South African countries, they are closer because the British state there, they tend to have the letter E for E, and then the Eastern African countries to have similar one like the South African. Okay, so sometimes you need to note them. Remember, Turkey, though Arab, they tend to have their E linked to the intermediate like the Europeans. Okay, so when it is E, instead of going for I like the Arabs will go for, they will use E most of the time, especially when it is at the end. But if it is not at the end, it's prefix, infix, then they use the I. That's Turkish. So some bits and pieces, but these will come up when we talk more about the spelling bee, right? So the other thing I wanted to talk about, the AO, so AU, and then EAU in French sounds O sound. And the EAU is at the end, and then AU can be prefix area or infix area. Okay, and then remember OO is O sound, that is U sound. OO, that is English one, O sound, right? Note that. AI can be A or I for French languages. Okay, so can have all that. And then remember, when you have OUILLE, the LL is silent in French. Okay, that's the ILLE is silent, but sometimes the LL becomes one L or becomes Y in French. But most of the time it is OUILLE. The LL is silent, and they have UI, UI. Okay, right. So let me just still get some more. The other thing that I want us to look at is or something. Yes. So let's talk about major differences. When it comes to Shua, you can also have Shua for some far off languages, but those ones you may need to know, have seen the word before. For instance, kill, kill may sound like ch in Chinese. Okay, so QI is chi or chi. Okay, right. And then remember K and Q. Q without U is common in Arab. Okay, right. Then when the K sound is very hard, then we use letter K, and that few words start with A. K. Now, when do we use S or C? When it's very, very soft, then we use S. If it is just soft a little, we use C most of the time. In fact, C is Latin and they tend to use more C's. Okay, when it is very hard, then they use the K. Also, when it's very soft, then they use the S too. Okay. The other thing is Greek will always use CH or C as hard K sound. Okay, but Latin can have the soft K and then the hard K, and sometimes the intermediate C soft sound. That is S, ch, k for C sound. Right, that's Latin. Right, so these are think pieces that I've put together. I'm sure when we talk about the words themselves, we'll have more details of that. Right, so the same thing goes for C and letter J. I have the similar, so you can have GI, GH, or J, but sometimes in Italian, when they use I, it tells you it is soft. When they use H, it tells you it's hard. So CI will be ch, and then CH will be k, k sound. Okay, so CIA O will be chow. Okay, but the C is silent. Okay, right. Now that is important. That is in Italian. You have to note that. I think that is enough for now. I'm sure the other ones we can discuss. Let me see if I can still remember some few rules. So these are the various languages. Later, what we do is we take we take the languages one after the other. So we look at the Germanic languages, we look at the Scandinavian languages, we look at the Gaelic languages, we look at the Asian languages, Japanese, and then Chinese languages. We look at the Hindi or Hindu, Sanskrit languages. We look at the Arab, and even within the Arab, those that are in the Middle East, and then those that are tilted towards European. We will look at all that. Bits and pieces of that will make your spelling. Will strengthen your foundation in spelling. All right. So thank you very much. Bye bye.